Hello, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I want to talk about budgeting, but specifically when it comes to budgeting for a weekly or variable income. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this video is because I actually received an email from someone asking what their budget should be like if they are self-employed and they're not maybe getting paid monthly or anything like that. And so what I wanted to do is just give some of my tips in terms of what you could potentially do and how you can make your budget successful. Okay, so Auntie V, I'm someone that doesn't get paid monthly. In fact, I get paid weekly, and I might even also have some variable income, so my income's not entirely consistent. Can I still have a budget? The answer is yes. I do believe you can still budget even if it's weekly or variable, but there are some things that you may need to do differently compared to someone that gets paid monthly on a consistent basis. So let's go on and talk about what you could be doing. So when it comes to budgeting on a weekly or variable income, one of the first tips I would give is to understand what your underlying costs are. And what I mean by this is, first of all, understand, what your essential bills are. So it could be that you're paying rent or a mortgage, maybe you're paying for utility bills, maybe property taxes, or it could be that you're paying for a SIM contract, transport, groceries, any of that. You really want to be clear on how much that comes to, because that's going to give you a good indication in terms of how much you should be setting aside for your budget at minimum every single week or month. And this is going to be especially important if you don't necessarily have a consistent income. So for example, let's say that you're self-employed and one month you end up making like 4,000, but then the next month you only make 2,000. You want to at least make sure that your essential bills are covered so that no matter what your income is like, you still know that at minimum your bills are going to get paid. So if you're not very sure on your numbers, or you don't really know how much your essential bills come to, that is probably one of the biggest things you need to be doing right now. I would be writing down each essential bill, so each category and how much does it come to. Now in terms of doing this, you can of course do it on a pen and paper, you can do it on an Excel spreadsheet. I even have a budget template that you could potentially use where you can write out all of your essential bills, but write out each category one by one. All of that should be listed out because you want to understand exactly how much does it come to in total. So for example, if you realize that your essential bills come to about 1,500 a month, well then you would know that at minimum you're going to need 1,500 a month to budget to make sure your essential bills are taken care of. And if you're liking this video so far, then feel free to give me a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel. Plus I'm sure you know it's free. Now the next tip I want to give you when it comes to budgeting a variable or weekly income is to think about having cash reserves. Now when it comes to cash reserves, this is going to be so much more important if you do have a variable income. For example, if you are self-employed and you don't always have a consistent paycheck every single month. So what I mean by cash reserves is using the first point, so understanding how much your essential bills come to. And notice that I said essential bills for a reason, because what I'm trying to say is you want to at least have some money, enough to cover your core expenses so that you can basically have shelter, you can be able to eat, and anything else is just a bonus. Anything else is just discretionary and it's not necessarily needed, but it's obviously nice to have. What you want to make sure is that at minimum your bills are covered. And so when I'm talking about reserves, what I mean is just having extra cash just in case you maybe have a bad month, and let's say you don't make any money at all, you at least know that if you have some money set aside for those essential bills to be paid, you have that security to pay them. Now, how much you would prefer to have in your reserves is totally up to you. Some people may have 3 months, some people may have 6 months, some people may even have a year's worth of expenses saved up. And when I'm talking about reserves, this could potentially be separate to your emergency fund. So usually when we're talking about an emergency fund, we're talking about, having cash set aside in case you lose your job, or if the car breaks down, or if your roof collapses, or your boiler breaks down, or anything like that. That's usually what an emergency fund is used for. What I'm talking about is if you do have a variable income, you may want to have both. So of course you may want to have an emergency fund, but you may also want to have some extra reserves just because you know that your income may fluctuate. And if you're, for example, self-employed, you may also have business expenses to pay for, so you want to make sure that those are also covered as well. Now, if you want to learn more about emergency funds and how you can set one up, I do have a video that explains that in a bit more detail, so make sure you check that out if you haven't already. I will make sure it's linked up here for you and in the description below. But having reserves is probably going to be one of the best things that you can do, because you at least have that security, knowing that no matter what happens to your income, even if it's fluctuating like that all the time, you at least know that your bills will be paid. And hey, you could even bump it up to make sure that your lifestyle stays the same as well. So maybe you don't want to just think about your essential bills, it's all up to you. But what I'm saying is just having those reserves will definitely help you sleep better at night. Now, the next tip I want to give you is to actually figure out how you want to budget. So what I mean is start to understand what kind of budgeting method you're going to use. So for example, I used to get paid monthly. So every single month, I think it was like on the 21st of each month, I would get paid exactly the same. But now I currently get paid weekly. So instead of getting paid once a month, I will get paid either 4 or 5 times a month. And so what I decided to do is, rather than budget for each week, I decided to save all of that money until the end of the month and then budget for the following month. So let's say that each week I get paid about 400. Rather than spending that 400 during that month, I won't spend it at all. I would actually leave it to the side. And so I will wait until the end of the month, and let's say I now have 1600 saved. That is what I will then use to budget for the next month, and then I will also have a monthly budget. Now, the reason why I've decided to do that is because my husband gets paid monthly, and so it's a lot easier for us to just bring the incomes together at the end of the month and then budget for the following month. But there are other options that you can do. So for example, I had a client where she was getting paid weekly and she decided to do her budget weekly as well. So literally when she would get paid, she would then budget for the following week, and she would decide where her money was going to go for the following week. It's slightly similar to having a monthly budget, but rather than budgeting for the whole month, you're literally budgeting for each week. So for example, let's say that you get paid 500 each week. Well, what you would be doing is allocating that money for the week. So part of that may go towards your rent, part of that may go towards your other bills, part of that may also go towards your other spending. The only thing with that is obviously you have to be very clear with when your bills are going to come out. So for example, if you know that you're going to be paying 500 for your rent, you have to be aware, knowing that 1 week of your paycheck is going to be used just to pay rent, and then that's it. Now let's say that your income wasn't very consistent, and instead of getting 500 each week, maybe 1 week it might be 400, 1 week it might be 700, and so on. Personally, I think that having reserves is probably going to be the best thing, because then you at least know that at minimum your bills are going to be paid for. But likewise with the weekly paycheck, you need to be very clear in terms of when your bills are coming, and make sure that you budget enough money before that so that you can pay those bills, because the last thing that you want is to not have any money to pay your bills. Now remember, there is no wrong or right answer. What works for me may not work for you. Again, I have clients who get paid weekly and they would prefer to use the second method, whereas I would prefer to use the first method just because it works for me and my family. It's all about figuring out what's best for you and what you feel comfortable with. Now the next tip I want to give you when it comes to budgeting weekly or variable income is to test, evaluate and adapt. Now what I mean by this is almost treat this like an experiment and figure out what's best for you. So again, if I'm using myself as an example, I thought that maybe budgeting for each week would work for me, but I realized that it would make it a little bit more difficult just because my husband gets paid once each month and our bills tend to come around the same time each month as well. So it just made sense for me to just collect the money and budget for the following month, even if I do get paid weekly. But I wouldn't have known that that was probably going to be the best method for me if I didn't just test it, evaluate it and see if it's working, and then adapt from there. So use this as an opportunity to see what's working. For example, if you realize that you are just not going to be disciplined enough to keep that money in your account and you're likely to spend it, well, maybe the second method is going to be best for you, where you literally just budget week by week as if you were budgeting for each month. Because I'm not going to lie to you, seeing cash in your account and knowing that you can't really touch it until the next month can be difficult. And if you're not disciplined enough to do that, you may find that you end up spending the money that you have in that account, even though you're technically supposed to use it for next month's budget. Again, there is no wrong or right answer. You just want to figure out what's going to be best for you. Now, if you find that you've always struggled to actually start a budget or even consistently stick to a budget and it's stopping you from reaching your savings goals or any other financial goals, then definitely check out my one-on-one coaching, because it's essentially designed to really help you personalize your own budget and make sure you have a system where you get paid that really does work for you and help you reach those financial goals. So make sure you do check that out if you haven't already. You can book a free call to find out more. So I'll link more information up here for you and in the description below. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, how do you get paid? Is it monthly, weekly? Is it just variable? I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next Tuesday.